Let me start out just adding on to what Sam said there about the relief for hurricane victims. I also want to do a huge shout out to everybody that worked with us on hurricane homes. I know we talked about the other day, but it was a Herculean effort, and I've never seen MLSs and associations get out of the way of politics as fast as they did on this. So thank you to everybody for just helping people. It's been wonderful, and tens of thousands of people have visited that site and reached out to realtors to find out about what they're supposed to do next. So thank you. I have some wonderful TRIBUS swag Yetis to give away. And I asked, because I've never actually done this before, of being the person to give them away. And I said, is there a list? And I was told we haven't really followed the list. So I get to pick what I want to do here for the minute, which is anybody in this room an actively practicing broker? Wine or coffee? Okay, one I'm back over here on this side. Maybe Sam or somebody can help me give these away. Who was the other person? Sam, would you mind handing that one? And then last one, I'll just, I'll pick, there wasn't a third person, was there? Oh. Boom, thank you, sir. Okay. Awesome. Now, I am going to completely rip off an idea that Dan Troop had for this session. And I thought he was going to do it the other day, and I didn't think I was going to have to do anything but stand up here and song and dance it for 5 minutes, and that was going to be it. But apparently I needed slides. So last night, after having a couple tequilas, I threw together some slides. So can we go to the next one? Oh, that's me. I'm the vice chair. Dan Troop is the chair of certification analytics. I've been talking about this concept for a long time, and when it finally came together, Dan said there was a bunch of people interested, but you've been the loudest, most annoying person at getting this together, so please come here and help me run this. So I kind of have said this a long time: that which is measured is improved, and that's the whole idea of the certification analytics group. So what the idea is we've gone through, and you've probably, hopefully everybody has been to this page. If you haven't, write it down. Please go visit it, certification.reso.org. You do not need to log in. You don't need to go into Confluence. You can go straight to this page and look up essentially every MLS that's gone through the certification process, how many fields they have. There's all these great tools of figuring out RESO data dictionary fields versus local fields. You can see what their availability is. One of my big things is UPI, and less than 1% of all property records have a UPI value. Please change that. But you can go in there and check out everything that's going on inside of that system. And so in the interest of not rehashing everything that Dan said the other day, I'm just gonna say one thing, which is please join our group. We would love to work together with everybody on this. We're trying to build out an exact mission statement, but you can see from the board here kind of what the overall goals of the organization or the group is. And so I'm going to decide to have some fun because it's the last session before pain points, and we're going to do a quick, let's call it RESO feud. And so if we can, we're going to say everybody, let's call it somewhere right down here at Catherine. If you're Catherine, Richard, everybody on this side, you get to be the right team, and this team is going to be the left team. So shout it out, throw your hand up, whatever you want to do. We're going to play a game. Top answers are on the board for the top utilized fields. Does anybody want to shout one out? Standard status is one. Okay, Bing. I don't know if we're gonna get. I had sound effects in my slide deck, but apparently they're not working. What was modification date is another one. Ding. Oh, there we go. Hey, yeah, we got the sounds working. Thank you, AVU folks. Anybody else? We have two. Property ID, property type. I heard. What was the ID one that I heard? Listing ID, that is one of them. Bing, bing, thank you. Okay. See, I knew we'd have some fun with this. Okay, anybody else? List date is not one of them. Yeah. I think somebody said modification timestamp. City is not one of them. Ironically, city is not one, but no, I heard a bunch of them that are no. State or province is more often used than city, which is interesting. Couple other ones, no legal description. Nope. Nope. Okay, I think the ones we're missing here, in the interest of moving this along, street name, source system key. I know, some of these I was surprised by myself. Unparsed address. Yep. And originating system key, I think. Oh, and list agent full name. Those are the top 10 in terms of usage. Now, I will personally, because I already gave them all away and I meant to do the third Yeti for this, but I will personally send you a Yeti if you can tell me the least populated field. Actually, funny story, fax is one of the most commonly populated. I think it's like number 12 on the list. Office fax, I'm not joking. I was only using property for this, the property resource, but no, fax is, it's like 93% utilization. I'm sorry? Nope. Yes, but that's not the right answer. All right, I don't think anybody's gonna get this because I was actually shocked by the data. Cooling is less than one is used. Yeah, thank you, John. That was awesome. Street direction prefix, virtual tour URL unbranded. Those are the three least commonly used fields. So any which way, so this is the cool part. We get to have some fun, but here it gives you a chance to really understand. Let me skip that one. Give you an idea of where you're at, where you're looking at on the data dictionary. Are you following the data dictionary? Is your vendor making you follow the data dictionary? Are you native? Rob Larson talked about that the other day. But you know, in DD 2.0, we are going to be looking at enumerations. That's a whole other bag of can of worms there. So be looking at your enumerations. Architectural style is a big one that I looked at. We talked about brick the other day, of having brick 3-sided, brick 4-sided. So be looking at your enumerations, check your data dictionary status. If you haven't, if you're not in the system, which I think hopefully everybody in the room is already in the system, go look at your fields. If you're in here and you're an MLS and you haven't gone to certification.reso.org to figure out where you're at in terms of the data dictionary usage, please go do that. So please join our work groups. You can obviously do that through Confluence. And that's it. Now on to Rick before pain points.
Hello. All right. Mic's working this time. Awesome. That's helpful. There a clicker. Here we go. All right. So thanks, guys. I'm Rick Herrera. I'm chair of the Data Consumer Group, vice president of research and development for Constellation One. Glad everybody is here. Actually still a pretty reasonable audience, so I'm kind of happy with this. You never quite know on that third day, you know? And for those that flew into Sarasota, those going to the West Coast, I know it was kind of tough, so awesome. I'm gonna take just a minute. I got 3 quick slides to go over. You can officially consider this the start of the pain point sessions. This is an open session. We're looking for conversation. We're looking for people to come up with questions. The mics should be on. If they're not, please turn the other mics on. I'll cover a couple things here that just kind of show a point that we really do take these things seriously. The stuff that we hear from you guys today becomes the roadmap. It truthfully does. Sometimes it takes us a while, Bullet number 1. Sometimes it takes us a while to get there, but we absolutely do take this stuff seriously. We log it back, we go watch the recording, we take notes on it, and it comes up in the very next discussion in transport, data dictionary, and the other work groups. So we're really glad. Have everybody here. Please feel free, interrupt me at any point. Raise your hand, go to a mic. This session will be as good as the participation that comes back this way. So with that, accomplishments for the past 6 months since we last met in Tucson. Number 1, I spoke a little bit on Tuesday, the implementation of RCP 27 and 28, which was essentially webhooks and push notifications. We have our first full implementation that's out there, people doing it. I made a promise on Tuesday, and so I can already report on that. I've spoken to quite a few of the major vendors, major data providers. I have firm, solid commitments from 2 of the big guys, big MLSs, big data providers. As soon as we come out of here, next week we get on the phone and we start talking about how we can go through and implement this at their level to start to push real-time data through for consumers across everywhere. So it has actually started. I have promises. I make my commitment to you as chair of the data consumer. I will push this. I will be on the call. I think there's a very interesting pain point topic to discuss. Is Bill here? Bill brought up, while I was up last time, how do we make sure this doesn't splinter? How do we make sure there aren't 6 different implementations? And that's been a lot of a topic that I've been having with people, and how to do that. And I mean, while we have some ideas, I would really welcome the feedback from you guys here today and how to do it. I've been part of this since the early days of RETS, and I was there when it splintered all over the place. And we still suffer from that today. When we did Web API, we pushed something really early, a basic thing, and it splintered everywhere. And so Bill's point is exceptionally valid. And so now the question is, how do we prevent that from happening with push notifications? You know, in the conversations I've had, I spoke to some of the vendors, I said my approach would be, let's target one item to do, one thing, one feature to add. And then let's try it, let's run it, and then let's report it to transport that month. And so every month rolling, we report something to transport, it gets discussed, the next month it gets approved, and we have a standard. And we try to do this through feature by feature throughout this. So that was my idea on how to do it, but I welcome feedback. Does anybody have other thoughts or suggestions? Because if it does splinter, we're all gonna suffer. Thoughts?
I agree. We should make it splinter.
Anyone? You don't get to hide. You're a chair. Come on.
In the office, anywhere. Hide in the back, right?
You're just tall, so you can sit in the back and see
I
over
got
everybody
you.
anyway.
Is this on? Yeah. Oh, cool. Is there some kind of sample implementation or code that we can pick up so we can, rewrite it in whatever language we need?
Yeah, I'd have to break it a bit because we do have some things that we do with regards to making sure we get the right fields to the right people. We collect we talked about 500 MLSs, and company A, consumer A may only have licenses for 10. So they're only getting notifications for 10. So there's some things I might have to sort out, but I would be very open to sharing the code. We are a .NET shop, so it would be C#, but I'm pretty happy to share it. Okay. Other thoughts? Okay. Then I'll move forward to the next topic here. Over the course of the last 6 months, one of the things we talked about here before was, limiting and quotas. And so we did add a review and we made a standard for rate limiting in Web API Core 2.1. So we now can check, as of 2.1, we'll now be able to we've made a standard where if you are going to rate limit, you have to reply back with a 429. And so we have to understand, if you get too many requests, it has to be a particular code back so we know as a consumer what to do with it. We know why it's happening, and then we can bring our throttles down and say, oh, we're hitting them too hard, we can slow down. Before we didn't have that, we weren't always sure. It ended up in calls. And so hopefully this does help, but that came out of this group. A lot of the stuff we've talked about has been about analytics and the work that's being done. Josh, I know you're out there. The guy works night and day. I kid you not. You know, I came back to the room last night, 10:30. I got a message from Josh. That's Josh. And so he has been working so hard to get usage stats and to create analytics and make us a data-driven organization. So we're not doing things guessing anymore. That game was awesome. How about that? That was super, super fun. But we can do that because of the usage that we're getting now, the data that we're getting now, and we're able to track this stuff. And so we're adding usage stats now in the wiki, and we're making it transparent and available to everybody. You can now go in there and you can see what fields are populated. If you have not gone and looked at the analytics, it's open to the public. Go play with it. You will lose time. You'll realize 15, 20 minutes later, I'm still filtering this stuff and I'm still playing with it. It is really awesome. So we have stats there now. We've been working on 2.0 and the 2.0 specification. And so we can now test on that, and we understand, you know, we've got tests ready so that we can test people on that going forward. Data Dictionary 2.0 is coming. It is due end of year 2023. That's going to be a really big piece. You know, my last slide is really about this one, and I had to throw this up there somewhere. The mystery meat. So in transport, we talk about the fact that we're collecting all this data. We go through, we pull an MLS feed, we review the data, we pull the metadata, and we're like, okay, here's all the stuff that it says. There's 1,000 fields. We find those 1,000. And then there's still another 1,000 that we don't know what they are. And so we refer to that as a mystery meat at this point. We're not sure exactly what it is or what to do with it. And going forward, we're going to start validating and testing against this. It's going to come, so I wanted to put it up here and forewarn. This is something we really need to get better at, and we're gonna start testing. It's gonna be part of the certification process. And so it's gonna make life so much easier for everyone to automate. And that is the goal. We wanna be fast, we wanna be transparent, we want people to be able to look at data, code against it, do it once, reuse it, and that's how we move technology and things forward. And that's what this is intending to do. One of the big challenges that I see, and I'll bring up as a topic that I have written here, is really about, you know, local fields and the use of local fields. And we've talked about it many times, but it's still an issue all the time, as we have fields that are in the data dictionary that aren't empty in the dictionary. What was the one you just brought up? Cooling. How can cooling be that low? I need to go back and look at this now, because I would bet you if we start looking at local fields, I'm gonna find a heck of a lot of cooling. And I see heads nodding going, yeah. That's what we're trying to solve. And that's what we're trying to do, to make it easier to automate and make it easier for everybody in the industry. I can tell you from our implementation, we went through and the first thing we did is we tried to create local fields and put them into our property resource. And it started to grow and grow, and we're changing the schema, and we're adding more, and I decided this isn't going to work. It's just too much. There's so much that's local. I know some of it belongs in RESO standards, and this will help, but the rest of it, I had to go through and make a separate resource. And so that's what we're going to do, and the next question that we're trying to figure out is, okay, if I have a local resource, how do we automate that? How do we make people aware of what that is? Is it just one-to-one field name value? Are they strings? Are they arrays? And how can I programmatically attack this? That's a big challenge we're having. We're talking about it in transport. We're open to suggestions. I'm very open to suggestions because I've barely started to tackle this myself in my own system. So if there's thoughts on that, happy to do it. Happy to have that discussion. Otherwise, that's the end of the slide part. And I open the floor to you guys. What topics and what pain points and what's hurting you guys? And I always need that first person to break the ice. Thank you, sir.
So this is a pain point I've talked to a few people about, but I would like to have 2 pain points per RESO. One at the very beginning, so we can discuss these things, have side conversations, and then maybe at the end, maybe recap, maybe even fix some of these issues and actually kind of say what some of the next steps are. And I know I bugged Sam yesterday about this and just told him I was going to do this. So, but yeah, I would love to have a second pain points earlier because again, we're half the people here than we are on Mondays too. So
I agree. So does the round of applause mean we have a second and a third and a fourth?
can we just have a pain point RESO event?
Breakfast pain points? And I'm going to write down mimosas.
All right, so I'll go on to another one I've recently run into. Back in the day with RETs, some of the MLSs would provide a ID and password for each individual feed you get from them. They're all IDX feeds, but they have to give me 5 credentials. I was hoping with the web API that MLSs would be wiser now and wouldn't be doing this. I have now stumbled on some MLSs with web API who are giving me separate credentials, same feeds, but they want me to log in using those credentials, and they yell at me when I don't use it because I only want to download it once. So I think there's probably some education that needs to be done with some of these MLSs on that topic.
Science. Okay. Does anybody want to talk about that? Does anybody have any additional things to add to that? Second?
So as an MLS administrator, we've had to lean in and educate our board on the fact that you don't need to reissue credentials. So yes, it is really an education event because we've had to train leadership against the model of provisioning for everything individually. Their perception of how we secure the data is different than the realities of it, and leaning into the contracts more than the keys to the kingdom. So really it's education to the leadership of the organization more so than the staff, I would say.
What is the mindset behind it?
That's a two-way street, though. So the MLSs also need our partners. The MLSs also need, The MLSs also need our partners to provide timely, records back on who your subscribers are so that we can bill them, right? So let's be good partners here. We can go down to one credential to one provider if you guys are able to provide your subscriber list to us. That's helpful for us as well.
So what is it that you need from data consumers? I know we at Constellation, we spend a lot of time on this, and we have a team, and this is a very big deal to us.
Well, we need to know who you've provisioned on your end, and I know for the Trestle and Bridge and other folks in the room, they're going to say, "Oh, that's what we do." But not everybody's billing system's set up the same way. So
is it just monthly reports? Because that's kind of what we're doing today. Is it just monthly reports of these are everybody that is accessing this data today?
if you have to do monthly, but real time would be better.
Ooh.
Now there's a good idea.
Come on, if we got to provide it real time.
So a web API, no, this is great. So store it in a database in a data store and provide an API back out that lets you hit it anytime you want. This is active, this is removed, the data was removed. Oh, okay.
Rick at R&D, we wrote a business case on this where, it seemed like, MLSs are asking vendors to log in as each person, but all you got to do is check the member record. When you're refreshing their website, right? Are they still active? Is the office in good standings? Is the agent, who you're providing websites for in good standing? And again, you think, for cost, like Bill says, for us to provide it once and for him to pull it once certainly takes both of our operational costs down, and sometimes significantly. You think about vendors who often, support hundreds of agent websites.
I was having a conversation at breakfast, and somebody asked about some of the complications of things in our industry, and I said, hey, you have to understand that real estate is governed by state largely. Obviously, we have we have the body of the NER, but it's also governed by state. And then within that state, you also have all the MLSs, and they have their own policy. So you have 50 sets of rules by state, and then you have MLS, and each one has its own policy. And so you have to figure that out, manage that, and be really good at it, and be good stewards. Reputations are very tough to earn. It takes a long time, but it's really easy to mess up and to lose it fast. And so you have to be really, really on top of it. And we have a big compliance team, that's why. And so it can be challenging. So ideas like what we're talking about right now, to me, are super helpful. I would be really happy to create an API endpoint that talks about who has access to what. I think that's a great idea.
I'll throw one idea. Yeah, I'll throw one idea in there too, which is that one of the big problems that I know we've encountered is when somebody doesn't pay, where's the line to shut them off? If you have to give a list, and especially if you have to pay based upon how many subscribers or members you have in your database, when somebody doesn't pay for a month, do we shut them off and then turn them back on again? Especially if you only have one subscriber in the market. And so there's a line there that I think we could all work better together to try to solve, whether when they're a subscriber and when they're not.
You give the MLS the switch and say, hey, this person's active, and they can switch it off, and it's not anymore for that person.
I was just
a client ID, you just
that's what I was going to say, is that same thing, just shut off our vendor creds, and then we'll respond real fast.
Gail,
The other
did you
issue
have something over there?
in regards
Gail?
of
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Oh,
Then
sorry.
Gail.
So I was going to comment something similar to that, because we have occasionally situations where brokers don't pay their bill on time, and that vendor, if you go to a single set of credentials, if that broker doesn't pay their fees, that's getting cut off. And I understand that the vendor will respond very quickly in that situation. But that is also at a time where our phones are ringing off the hook, and our responsiveness to you in that particular situation to get you re-engaged and reactivated isn't necessarily always the type of response time frame that you would enjoy. So I understand the request, and just careful what you ask for, because you just might get it.
So would you be happy if you had the ability to turn off a feed that way in that same case, though? So enable, disabled, and click a button.
So right now, I do have that situation, because my vendors have multiple sets of credentials, and then only that one brokerages are turned off. And so the vendor can still service their other clients. But if you're down to one and that one isn't paid, it could be detrimental. So
I mean, from a consumer standpoint, I will say, because I'm in a mix, right? We definitely have MLSs where we're required to have the same data set 5 times, and we do that, and that's fine. It's not my preferred approach by any means, but we certainly do it. And we do have those that actually give us one set of credentials. But when we push things out, everybody has a client ID. You can always turn off any one person without affecting the other people. Like that's certainly there today. The question is, do we maybe just give that option also to the MLS, so that there's transparency and so that there's power that way, and then you still sleep good at night saying, okay, I can still do this even with one feed. From a technology perspective, that's super helpful. From a consumer standpoint, I know I've had many conversations with people that, no one's a fan of the multiple feeds. It's tough. It really messes with the reporting really bad. It costs a lot. It's heavy on the servers. I've spoken during webhooks how often we have to hit the MLSs. Well, if I've got 5 feeds, I got to hit that vendor 5 times for the same thing.
So
not fun.
So the way that we handle that is we'll give you the credentials, or we'll give you multiple sets of credentials. We don't make you use each individual one for multiple pulls, but you have them if you need them.
I don't don't know. I think my lab's off. One item on there, though, from the opposite side that would be really easy is, there's this thing, it's email, and it actually still works fairly well if it's handled correctly. And what I mean by that is, like, I can't tell you how many MLSs we get where we have to send them a monthly list of the subscribers, and then they kick back to us and say, oh, well, these people aren't subscribers anymore. For any of you that do that, that's fine, and it works actually really well, because if somebody doesn't pay and we need to shut them off, we can click a button right then and shut them off. And in our world, that all goes to a ticketing platform, and I've got 10 people that do nothing but click those buttons all day. But what really gets frustrating is when we have to send the same list for 36 straight months because we have one client and they have that particular MLS. Like, it would be nice if we could just say, assume it's this person until you hear otherwise from us, and that there would be a trust on that instead of having to file the same report over and over again. But email, I don't know, from a vendor standpoint, I know there's other vendors in here too. From my standpoint, getting an email to our ticketing platform that says, hey, so-and-so is not paying anymore, we're going to turn them off in 30 seconds. So.
And we've been collecting your questions this week as well through the app. So someone would ask about better standards on display compliance per MLS feed and type. Are there general questions from folks here about display compliance depending on feeds and types? There's clearly one. Probably.
I knew this was going to be my wife. This is what's funny.
Thanks. No, the question came from me. It's usually vague, buried in an agreement, and I wish there could be more standards around what we're supposed to do as good vendors. There's so much fear about what we might do, so we'd love to have it more clear what we should be doing.
Can you add some specificity to that for the group? What is it?
Property details or property archive pages, what we have to display, how large, what color, what the contrast is. There's so many requirements about all these things, but at the basic level, is the listing agent, the listing brokerage required on which page? What's your disclaimer? What's your current logo URL? That would be really great to have in a resource.
Current logo, that's a good one.
I control it now.
Hi. I've never actually spoken at one of these things before.
Welcome.
I know. It's a little intimidating holding a mic. I am Julie, or JP, and I have spent 18 years on the MLS organization side, and just 3 months ago went over to a vendor side. So this perspective of knowing versus actually knowing what this session is about has been really eye-opening. The one thing that I would say would make it so much easier for vendors especially is if you just had a page on your website, your MLS organization website or your association website, that would clearly outline the process, the branding information, rules specific to it, even maybe possibly a copy to your license, so we can see these things and know. And we don't, if I also understand that you're running around with 5 different hats on and putting out fires and have to triage the 500 emails that just came in. So there might be questions that get lost where we're trying to be the good stewards of the data. So having a place like that where you can go and just pull the information on demand, even just a little bit, would be a huge, huge help. I have, even as an MLS level, I have gone to other MLSs and tried to emulate what they did on their websites too. So that's what I have to share.
And there's a comment behind you there.
I absolutely second that. There's a lot of disconnect between those of us that are doing the implementation and those of us that have access to those rules and regulations. The other thing that gets kind of confusing is what I like to call the legalese. It's how do I translate this into an action item that I can take to make sure that we remain in compliance? When you read through some of these policies, it's really difficult to massage out what the expectations are. So having a page that I can go to on a site where I can look at these rules in plain English, maybe with some examples that show me those that comply and those that don't, and even take it one step further and put it in a tiered list So a P0 compliance item, these are the things that will get you shut off if you don't comply. Then the P1s, these are things that are a big deal, but we'll work with you to give you some time to solve the problems, would be phenomenal for those of us at the implementation level, because then we don't have to go to a person in our organization who has to email a person in your organization and wait for a response, and we know you're busy. So it can take a while for us to get a response back, and the whole time, us engineers are sitting there going, well, what do? We want to make sure that we're doing this right, but we don't have an answer.
And to add quickly to that.
Too, of good versus bad to compare. You know, this is okay, this is not okay. I could see where that could be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, Council of MLS has best practices that these things should be out there, but maybe we need more of a framework from the implementers to say, these are the rules I need, this is what I need to know. Maybe there's more than just what we've started with, so we could work with them as well on that.
Thank you, Catherine McIntosh, realestate.lab. From a pain point perspective, I just want to iterate what's being said here, because from a vendor wanting to work with MLSs and do the best job, be in compliance, make sure we're like a gold star vendor, we sometimes have documentation that doesn't match the reality of what's happening. And then it's very difficult to reach someone because resources are stressed at some of the MLSs. So then it's like, well, here's the feed, figure it out, and we're trying our best to figure it out. One time our importer broke, and it turned out it was because somebody did something where test data got in the actual data by mistake, but then we didn't know that until the importer broke, and I reached out to them, and then we didn't even have a list of which listings to delete. So basically right now, you know, you could have somebody who's a consumer working with an agent through their own website that finds a listing that wasn't even real and not even intended to be there, and we can't even find it to delete it because there's not a delete list. How is that possible? So these kinds of things, even like was said, getting an email that a change is coming instead of discovering it because our importer broke.
I'd actually love to ask a question of all the MLS people in the room, and this came up, this exact thing Catherine's talking about, came up 3 times this week. How many of you that are MLS folks that know the answer to this question, how many of you have a production server and a testing server? Okay, a good chunk of them, but not everybody does. And that is exactly what happens, and we find properties that come out in the list that say, oh, this property is $999,999,000,000, and of course at the top of every page.
While we're at it, I just want to throw this out. If you have a test server, please take advantage of that. We'll provide that for you. And don't stop testing your stuff against my production level server. That's why I give you a test server. I will work with you in a test environment all day, every day. But the next time you get an angry email from me because I turned you off because you decided to test your new cool hotness against my production server, don't be mad. That's why I have a test server for you.
Somebody get that guy from Mimosa.
Hey, so from the MLS side, just kind of a thought. This may not apply to everyone. This is my first time speaking as well. So I personally try to be super proactive, super helpful. One specific instance that I've had, we do send out the emails. We do send out the notices. It got to the point where it came to a phone call, and the response was, oh yeah, I got all those. I was ignoring them. So it's again, this won't apply to everyone, but you know, you do try, and then it's like the bad actor, if you will. And so, you know, you do try to be helpful. You do want to be the best. You know, we're all on the same team. And so just kind of that perspective, like, yeah, we know you're trying. It's on, you know, we were ignoring it.
I will say from that level, communication is very, very important of the difference between, hey, this is going to be a breaking change, or hey, you need to turn somebody off. And sometimes you got to, from the MLS standpoint, if you look from a vendor standpoint, what you have to realize is, like TRIBUS has 210 or 215 separate feeds, and we get an inbox and it has a lot of stuff. And sometimes it's, we're adding a field in 17 Tuesdays from now. And then some other ones are like, you need to shut this person off right now. And so it would be really great if it was very clear which one was which.
Having said that, though, I will add, don't let one person discourage you. The communication is good, it is appreciated, it is needed.
Yep.
We have distribution groups for it, we have calendars for it. You can plug stuff in the calendar. This is going to happen on this way. And that is one of the ways we deal with stuff, so if that's helpful to anybody else, right? We have a shared calendar for these types of things. Whenever we see change is going to happen, we add it to a calendar. And even if it is 17 Tuesdays from now, at least it's on a calendar somewhere we're not going to forget. So there are ways to deal with it. Yeah, I'm sorry you talked to whoever that is, but don't let that negatively impact you. We appreciate the communication.
The only last thing I wanted to add there was we have all these humans involved in approvals and agreements, and we're reading them and we're trying, but the tech is the application. I envision a world where we could programmatically say, true, false, you need to do this or that. So that's really the ask, is let's iron out what those requirements are. And if we can put it somewhere where the code can pick up, I must do or I can't do per board, per feed, then everything's right. And you can blame the vendor if they do something wrong, because it is black and white, crystal clear there. And it's not up to a human to interpret a 30-page agreement.
I know. Definitely get my steps.
Hi, so as an MLS, I love this idea that we had over here of a gold star, like a gold star data feed participant, right? Because as an MLS, when I get a new access of requests come in, a lot of times I got to play Sherlock Holmes on the internet to find out that these people are actually decent at what they do. I can give them a feed without having to worry about it. And we're supposed to 24-hour turnaround on an agreement to get someone onboarded onto IDX at this point. Like having a place for me to go, not like a better business bureau for IDX people, but just a place where I can go and say, these people know what they're doing, even if it's like through RESO, through their RESO certification, I can go, they know what they're doing. I really don't have to dig a lot here, give them their feed and move on would speed up that process a lot for me.
There is some a cross-border discussion on this. The CMLS Council, as it was mentioned, is talking about the fast pass or the TSA pre-check for vendors, and I think that is a very important topic, whether it's here or in Council of MLS. I think it should be discussed.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the OUID could be a great place for that, because I don't think right now, Josh isn't tracking. There's no way to track or store data that says this organization is connected with these 210 MLSs right now, right?
There are ways to do that. I'm sorry, be the wet blanket for a second again and say we don't say TSA pre-check and we don't have whitelists and blacklists and we won't be any part of that. So having good information about what organizations have worked with other organizations and have had a history of following the rules would be really helpful. And I think that's the goal of this process. We're trying really hard to not say pre-check anymore. And our attorneys remind us very regularly that we will never be a part of that kind of a process. But your ideas are right. You're right. It would be really helpful. We know the companies who probably know exactly what to do when they go into a new MLS and get a data feed and can follow the rules. So very valuable.
I understand the legal aspect of that, but I will say there is a need from the consumer side, and it has been expressed repeatedly and over. People want to do the right thing, and having a way to validate that and be recognized for it, because you spend a lot of time, a lot of resources, and a lot of money on it, is really helpful. And then obviously to improve the process, to streamline it, saves time on both ends so much. So I understand you can't use those words, I guess, and fair enough. We'll always abide by the legal.
But I think it's important to remember, a couple of years ago, we talked about this in broker advisory, that if MLSs wanted to self-report the vendors they had worked with and had a good experience, or maybe not even a good experience, just that they've worked with them and it's been fine, we could potentially collect that information, and it's just objective information about organizations. Then you all could decide what you wanted to do with that information.
My feedback to you is we are super excited for whatever comes out of that.
Is there a certification? Would that be something that you would want to go for? Some kind of a certification a vendor could do? Or is that still too much of an antitrust
We can have conversations about these things and figure out where that goes. But as of right now, certifications are about technical capabilities that are black and white, not about whether you're good or medium or bad for others to work with. So that's where we are right now.
I, for one, suggest bringing back the vendor certifications. And I know those got turned off for a while, but there's a black and white answer right there, right? Like, I have connected to X web API servers and downloaded data and everything like that. It's black and white, right?
Even like a list of these are the fields that we display publicly, right? And then I can just look at those fields on the list that they apply.
Yep.
And then go, that matches up with us, you get the IDX file bucket in the next month.
Could you repeat that, Eric?
I'll let him say it in his own words.
So I was saying, even like when we're talking about that, is if they have a list of these are all the fields that we provide publicly, I can double check that against my list of fields that I want them to display publicly. And if I go, okay, well, I know you're going to fall into my IDX bucket, you're going to fall into my Val bucket, you're going to fall into my back office bucket. So even through that process, without having to play 20 questions with the person trying to find out where they fall within our data agreements, I can almost see that right off the bat too and get that ball rolling even faster.
So if I could recap that, from the MLS side, the ask is, can you guys give us a list of what you publish as IDX or what you hand out as IDX so that it's aware? Okay, I mean, a lot of that starts with the metadata. We didn't catch. Yeah. What can consumers provide back?
Mine steps back a little bit, but we mentioned the wet blanket moment where RESO doesn't want to be involved in that TSA pre-check per se. But there's to me another solution that RESO hosts but is not involved in would be an endorsement system, where as a vendor I can get my data providers to provide me endorsements, basically a green check approval, we like these people, and then other MLSs, as we approach them, can use that and say, you know, we know that we trust MRED's endorsements, so if this vendor is approved by MRED, then they're approved by us. And RESO could host a platform where those endorsements could be made visible, but it's not something that you're responsible for. It's simply a visualization or a tool that a provider can use to say, well, is this vendor a good vendor? And find out from their counterparts whether or not we are.
So this is Al, so I'll say this is also my first time speaking in one of these. I will just say in Trestle we do some of this. We do some technology provider scoring to kind of keep it a little objective. But I'll just leave it at that. I can tell Sam wants to get away from this topic, so I'll move on to another. I think it's going to be important, especially around the time for Data Dictionary 2.0, to start having some general best practices around mass data updates. I'm about to touch 200 million listings, and I can do it in no time flat, but the data consumers can't pull it in that quickly. So a lot of times we'll do things like update the past year and touch the modification timestamps there. A lot of providers still can't keep up with that rate, and then we'll go ahead and update the data but not touch mod timestamp for the majority of the listings. That works fairly well for vendors who do reconciliation, but if you're not doing reconciliation, you never get those data updates. Even though we tell you if you need to pull that data, go back and do it manually, but most people don't do it until a year later they want to know why their data's out of date. So I think if we have at least a best practice we can all kind of expect what we're gonna do in these sort of situations, I think it would go a long way to making these sort of transitions easier.
Great idea. We've needed that for a long time, actually.
Yeah, thank you to our first-time caller. I'm not trying to get away from the topic. You guys can discuss it as long as you like. I'm just trying to give you feedback on the board and our legal team's advice so far. It's a great idea, but we need to do it right. So we figure out the business need, and then we work through whether we can make it happen.
So I think Al brings up a good point. CoreLogic is a trusted voice in the room and a trusted way to vet things. There are other trusted entities that are out there, and one thing we look at is NAR's REACH program. If they've made it to REACH or made it as a finalist in REACH, we know that they're doing pretty good work, and they're doing it safely with the realtor at the center of the transaction. They're doing data diligence. That's one thing that we look at. There's other good entities out there as well.
How many updates did you say you were going to do? Sorry. That was kind of scary for me right now. I'm telling you, I felt that here. I was like, oh. Okay, but I'm glad to know.
Well, one more thing I forgot on that. One thing that we're also considering is starting to add checksums into our listing set and letting people reconcile against the checksum. Since modification timestamp can't always be trusted to be updated, but the checksum would, regardless of whether modification timestamp had been touched. So if you set up your reconcile to look at the key, the checksum, and then you fix the difference, that's another easy way to kind of get around that.
The hash of a complete record.
Did you write this question, Al? The modification timestamp question?
I had another pain point that I wanted to bring up if we're ready to move to another pain point. So recently we discovered what we've started calling multi-use local fields. And what these are is they are local fields that come from a native MLS system, but they have a different use case depending on which class the record came from in the native system. So in one case, we had a multi-use field that in the residential class meant like pool type, but in the land class meant zoning, and in the residential income class meant number of pets allowed. These local fields are incredibly difficult to use when you're doing normalization because we don't have that visibility into the origin class of the record in a web API feed. So we kind of have to make some assumptions or not use the data. And then on a display side, because it's multi-use, you have to conditionally set the display value of the field based off of the origin class of the record that was used for the listing display. I personally, my advice on my team was that for multi-use local fields, we throw them away because it's just too much work to support them. And I wanted to bring it up as this isn't good. We love the local fields, but we need them to have one meaning.
So an example of a multi-use field would be custom 01.
Yes.
I know a moron who did that once and realized that was a terrible mistake. Good.
I'm going to ask her to introduce herself because she's been a rock star volunteer in our work groups, and you should all know who she is.
Okay, I'm Amanda Zimmerman. I'm with Redfin. My title is an inventory software specialist, but I am responsible for the data mapping for MLS data for display on the Redfin site.
We are very glad to have you here.
I want to keep kind of echoing on that and on what Bill's comment before. If we can't come up with some sort of standard for customized fields, I don't know why we're continuing to do pain points. This has been a topic that we've talked about for 5 years now. Like, I don't know if it needs a standard or if it needs recommendation, but it's getting kind of long in the tooth to keep rehashing this one. So I don't know where we need to go, but I'm happy to help.
Certification analytics, thank you, come please. You know, I mean, that's the whole point is if you look in there, man, you can pull up and see what all the local fields are. Josh Darnell has done an absolute yeoman's work on getting that thing done. And you can go in there and see what are all the local fields and then why the heck is custom 01 and why does it say all kinds of weird words in it that I don't understand what they mean. So, but I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why I got really excited about being involved with it. Was that exact thing. I'm tired of dealing with the same problem.
I think finding them's easy. It's finding a way how we're going to redistribute those fields in a standard way across everywhere. You're putting them in the property resource, you put them in a custom resource, like finding them, you all have done the hard work there. Now we need to figure out where the heck they go, whether it's standardizing them or standardizing the ability to do them custom.
Rob Larson, what's Rob's, the sentence that he always has in all of his slides? It's, if the dictionary does it, you must do it that way too, right? Something like that. And that's when we can start putting light on all of these weird fields and things that people have done, then we can start saying, no, you need to go do that over here. But without what we have, without what we have now, that has just recently been added, we didn't know that. There was the conversations and little, like we have a drink together and something came up. And now it's like, you can't hide behind it anymore. You can't say, oh, well, we really don't do that when you've got 50 fields that are doing that.
The vendors knew. We knew what we were doing with the fields and we knew which ones and where they were going, but I'm starting to invest a lot of money into putting them in their separate resource. If a year from now we decide to change that, I'm throwing all that away and having to spend even more money to get it re-standardized. So we've got to find the solution.
I think Rob said it in the work group or the roundtable discussion the other day about data dictionary is be ready. Everybody needs to be ready. If you're sitting in this room, everybody needs to be ready to spend money. We're all going to be better, but it's going to take effort. It's going to take dollars. It's going to take people. It's going to take a lot of hard work, but we're finally going to dig out of the hole that we've been in for 20 years.
I vote separate custom resource. That is all.
Yeah, it is one of those things too. I will say we have had some good conversations around it. It has started to grow momentum. I think that ball is starting to roll. I agree, we've talked about it forever. But I do think, we had the data consumer group where we really talked and we did the analysis. How many have a separate resource? How many have it within property? What is the vote? What do we want to do with that? It is a multi-pronged problem. Some of it is, it's supposed to be the dictionary, but it's not. Some of it is, okay, we can do some things as name value pairs. Some of it is, and there's a whole bunch of different challenges there. It's not like a one thing, which is make the problem a little more complex. I agree with you, and I understand exactly what you're saying. We are making, I think momentum is starting. I think we're further along today than we were a year ago. So hang in there with the frustration, because I think we are finally making stuff.
And I had a comment too. As an MLS provider and kind of a medium large size one, doing the first data share, we got a lot of visibility into how poorly we understood our own data and also how poorly some of the smaller MLSs had any knowledge of their MLS data. So I'd encourage the vendors to have a dialogue when you find things, please tell us as well. We may not be aware of the potential impacts of changes that we're making. And we try to be diligent about giving 30 days notice that we're going to do these things. And we're receptive to feedback. Hey, that's a big impact for us. We need an extension. We need you to hold off. Or, hey, that's an easy change and you guys can accelerate that. So be open to having a dialogue with your MLS folks, because sometimes we just are not fully aware of the impacts to the vendor side.
And I don't want to ignore the questions we did get in the app. So a couple of them scare me a little bit, so we may have to time box them, but we'll see how it goes. There was a question about the listing attribution policy, and we've talked a lot about NAR policy is not what we do, but we certainly influence and help educate around it. So someone was asking what feedback was, what brokers were feeling. Obviously, brokers are just one set of our membership classes, but is there any specific feedback that folks had so far on the policy and whether they appreciate it was the question. And we have a former broker.
I will just say in our market, we implemented a customized solution to that, and we've gotten zero feedback, neither positive or negative. So,
I certainly have an opinion on it, but I want to hear the rest other stuff first.
Same as Jeff, but also zero people using it. No feedback and no usage.
I thought that would go a lot longer.
On the
Fantastic.
on the data consumer side, I will say that last week before it was supposed to be implemented, we got last second notifications all over the place. So all of a sudden it's add this, all this. And we knew it was coming, but it's a combination of, okay, and this is an interesting part that I don't know how we fix this, but in Tucson, we said, this is gonna be called attribution contact, I think is what it was. There was a specific name given to it in the data dictionary that was approved 50 to whatever in Tucson. How much did we see of that? Not that much. From the RESO standpoint, I actually struggled a minute. When I started to see this come in, I'm like, oh yeah, we have to do this, that's right. I went straight to the data dictionary, tried to find it, it's not there. I looked at my desk right now before I came up here 10 minutes ago, whatever it was. It's still not in there. It's not in the wiki. It's 2.1, so it's not there. So we created scatter. Putting my RESO hat on, we probably need to do a better job making sure that was out there, that what the name was, and it needed some additional PR. Like we did the right steps. If we were going to do a retro, I would say we did the right steps. We needed to follow a little more PR around it to have made it more streamlined.
And we can take that feedback. We should address that just for folks who are new. When a new standard comes through, it takes obviously time before it gets ratified by the board. We're not supposed to move fast in a lot of cases. We're supposed to make sure that we get it right. So you'll see these iterations of the data dictionary that come 1-2 years apart. And the current one will be something that's been well vetted by everyone. But certainly if membership wants us to get more publicity around certain things that we're working on that may not be in the current ratified standards of the current testing tools, we can work on that as well.
We did end up adding attribution contact to our extended our data dictionary to it. So when we get to 2.1, it'll be there, but.
He said it goes under custom 01 for now. He said it should go into custom 01 for now.
Sorry. I know we want to move on, but that whole process was intensely frustrating on the MLS side. So we wanted to be in compliance, and my boss is like a stickler for it. If NAR says it's 9.1, it's 9.1. And then somebody at NAR told somebody else that, yeah, it's a soft date, you know. And so my vendor wasn't ready for 9.1, and there's no standards. And we all knew it was coming for 9 months. So how did we get caught short? So I'm on the policy committee too, right? I was sitting in the room when we talked about it. It was pretty clear, you know.
I mean, I think there may be, and Rob Larson's going to kill me for saying this, but there may be an opportunity for something to get fast tracked to get added to like a mid version, like a 2.0.1 or something like that release. When patch release, thank you, see, she knows. But when there's something that's an emergent item where NAR forces the hand to do something, we might be 1.5 years or 2 years away from adding something to the data dictionary according to the standard plan. But there may be a reason to do it faster for exactly this reason.
This might be, and this is a great use case of why I agree with you. And I know that's historically not something they wanted to do, but it's a really important use case.
And an important data point is there are about 15, but in most cases about 6 data providers at the MLS level. So if they're all involved in the conversation with us, with CMLS, with NAR, then most of that information gets delivered. But certainly better communications are always on the table.
I have a list of other questions. I've been scratching them off as he has some. What other topics do we have? Go ahead, do it, please. Come back.
Hello. So going back to when we were talking about reporting to MLSs, it would be great if the MLSs kind of standardized on how we provide that to them. We have lots of different MLSs where they want different fields, and we have spent a lot of time trying to generate those. So it'd be great if there was some kind of standard around reporting back to the MLS. And honestly, if that happens, then it's easier for us to automate that and eventually go to that more real-time system too.
So we had 2 comments in the live stream about this topic. Can we standardize the way data feed payment information is handled? These things vary greatly, and what if there was a payload they could query to know what that looked like?
I'm all for standardizing it. Now let's start with
We don't discuss pricing information at RESO. Thank you.
I mean, I saw at least 2 people just sitting in this room over the past 2 days. I saw 2 different vendors with spreadsheets up that they were logging all of their payments to you guys, to the MLSs, of what had been paid and how much it get paid, and is this a monthly, is this a quarterly, is this a yearly? So I will definitely second that. It's a lot of work that goes into that. And then, you know, most of the MLSs, you guys probably know, we just pass the fee through to our clients anyways. So then we got to go collect it all from them. And then they say, why are you charging me this? If we could go to something and say, oh, here's their fee sheet.
It's a dicey conversation and not something we're going to spend very much time on. I think their question is there a framework within which they could understand differences across organizations where we have no opinion on what the pricing or the business model is?
You want me to read the antitrust?
Please, again.
You said there was 2 comments that were posted. Is there another one?
That one itself, 2 different folks on the live stream.
Do we have additional topics? These are all what are the other pain points? These are all the pain points? I got a feeling there's more.
We've got one last one from the app, but if you guys have something in person.
First of all, thank you, Sam and the staff. Let's give them another hand for everything they've done here. Awesome job. Rob Reed from Elm Street, and this doesn't really quite fall under the topic of pain points, so I wanted to first of all say thank you. Thank you to all the MLS partners we have in this room. We've asked you to do some pretty interesting things with the data feeds we've gotten from you, received from you rather, in the last 12 months, and I really, really appreciate the collaborative approach to our requests that you've picked those up and really helped us a lot. And the other thing too I'd like to thank this group for is obviously we've had a lot of different solutions when it comes to data feeds here. And as you as an MLS migrate from one data provider to the next, you guys are doing a great job of getting advance notice to people. I just encourage you to keep that up. That really helps us immensely. And just, I'm going to be Captain Obvious here, but gosh, it would be really, really good if we could get some standardization around the approval process. It's killer. We still have almost 600 different processes for all the different MLSs we have out there, and all it does is adds time and frustration to your members out there in terms of getting their hands on an application fueled by your data. So anything that we can do to help with that process along, we're all about it. And I get there might be some local statutes that you have to be mindful of when you do your rules and regulations. But gosh, it would be really good if we could just flatline that, because that would really do more to help stimulate innovation in this space than anything else. Thank you again.
What else would you like us to work on in the next 6 months? What do you want us to come back in 6 months from now and say, we worked on this and we got together as a group, and what else can we do?
I mean, you know, to kick back toward compliance, I mean, because it's expensive for both sides of this deal, right? But I mean, if you think about, you know, our AI vendors and stuff like that out there, it may want, you know, if we could get a collaborative effort, you know, for just simple IDX sites to, you know, drop your staging URL at us, and at least, you know, we can get something kind of quickly back between the two of us. Because I mean, you know, well, unfortunately, it's that people power that, you know, most MLSs are a little, you know, short on, et cetera. And I think, you know, the 80-20 rule must, like, you know, rule here, where, you know, addresses and all those things are very, very standard. And I think, you know, artificial intelligence can probably do an awful lot for, us as MLSs and the data consumers to kind of quickly at least get them, that 80% there. And then, for us, then it's just, a compliance person, looking at maybe those couple of local or custom fields.
You're part of RESO, you're chair of?
R&D, look at that.
Sounds kind of R&D-ish, I'm just
Wow,
saying.
kick that right back. Well, but, is there an appetite? Because, there is money to be spent, right? It's not free, but I really think, when you think of, salaries, et cetera, and, for MLSs, and I'm sure for, vendors, that's the biggest cost of running our businesses. So if we can do something to kind of, roll those hours back, it makes sense. But we've got to make sure we've got the right appetite, because it's got to be a collaborative, cooperative effort where, at some point checks will get written, right?
I would say from the conversations we've heard so far, there is an appetite.
I will also say it's everybody in this room's responsibility. You probably have heard me say this before, but we're all stewards of everybody's data. Like, we all need to be looking out for everybody else. Just like we're a vendor, we constantly find, in fact, 2 days ago, somebody asked me, is this allowed? I'm a vendor. And I was like, no, that's not allowed. You can't do that. But we find all the time these companies that say, oh, for $59, we can give you the entire data set of every single listing in the entire United States, right? We found a company in Spain that was doing this not so long ago that was just totally scraping broker websites and things. And it's a matter of every single person in this room standing up and saying, we're not going to allow that. And when we see something, we're going to say something.
So there's one more that came from the app this week, and it's very different than what we've been talking about, but might get some interesting information. The differences in brokers, sponsors, broker in charge, designated realtor, et cetera. And folks are looking for ways to be able to, across state lines, as we discussed earlier, we can't control state regulations, but to be able to standardize those into categories or buckets maybe. Has anybody found a way to make that more efficient across state lines?
Did I make it a valid pain point?
Is there a field in the data dictionary for identifying who the designated broker is? I don't know.
Not sure, to be honest. I would have to go look it up. I would go to the wiki. It's always saved and it's always open, and there's always a tab with it, and I would go type in the search right now. I don't know. I don't know what, as I think as RESO continues to grow, and we have the dictionary, perhaps over time that can be something that becomes more standardized based upon the language that we use. But
yeah, just a quick comment on that broker in charge. So back in my Clarity days, we obviously dealt with a lot of roster data. I would ask you as an MLS to please ask your membership management vendor to actually support web API and data dictionary standards, because there is none that do at all.
I have one last tidbit then that I think I will close with. And so I went, as I usually do before these conferences, I go and I look for trends, and I'm a data guy. So one last piece to just kind of talk about some of the progress and to perhaps end on a positive note. Over the course so far this year, Constellation One, we've done, by the end of the year, we expect to have about 46 RETs to web API conversions done. That'll bring us up into the upper 40s for total MLS counts and stuff. And I looked at the other side and said, how many RETs to RETs have we done this year? And the answer was 4. 4. So from a web API perspective, certainly we see where the trend is. It's all happening, it's folding. We all wish it was happening faster, but we are certainly making progress in the right way. And that's where it's going. So I thought I hadn't shared that number with you yet, so I was kind of looking at you. I thought you might want to hear that too.
Fantastic, thank you.
All right.
Can we thank Rick and Eric, please?
Yes.